over to East Cleveland and get yourself a taste of
Oh yeah.
culture.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so some great things to do for locals today if they want to participate in some things. And it's always about keeping up the culture, keeping up the information, and doing our part, to bring our good information out to our folks. Today we got a great show for you, and I guess Brother Vince has the bio, but before we actually give his credentials and what he's about, I'm just going to say that I've been watching this brother for a little bit on for folks who may watch Sonetta TV. At times, you can, and well, most times you can get a lot of good information from there, but at times you have I think a person that comes on that really is dynamite that you think really can go far, and it's going to be a good contributor to our culture, our people, from the motherland to the African Americans that reside here in America. And I really think that he's going to be a superstar in that whole field of study and dealing with Pan Africanism, and it's going to be a real good benefit to our particular country and people. And I think we're going to see great things from him. I'm going to try to get him here in Cleveland one day, and we're already working on doing a couple podcasts on the journey with Hamptonio, and I think you wouldn't want to miss it. So, with that, I'm gonna kick it over to Vince, and Vince, let our listeners know who our dear brother is.
All righty. Sekou Keller is a Liberian citizen. He's a Pan African and cultural activist. He's the president and chief executive officer of I Care Canada, an NGO for cultural mediation and social empowerment. He has several years of experience in humanitarian and community based organization works. In 2017, he served as culture mediator for Italian Red Cross in Catania City. His ability to speak several languages, including Mandingo, Hausa, English, French, and Italian, was highly helpful in making communication simple between migrants and service providers at emergency centers in Sicily. In 2016, he was elected first Secretary General of the Federation of Liberian Mandingo in Europe, a community and culture-based organization. There's so much more that we can share, but we'd like to bring him into the studio right now. So, ladies and gentlemen, those who are listening and watching on YouTube and Facebook, please welcome Sekou Keller.
Thank you. Thank you. Peace and blessings to the panel. Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here, Brother Vincent and Brother Hampson. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to join the community. We've been talking about this for a while.
Yes.
But I will come on this show, and I thank the Creator and the ancestors that today we have made it to come to pass, and everything has been done. And we are very happy to talk to the family, and we are here to just discuss knowledge and the advancement of our people.
Yes, absolutely, my brother. It's a pleasure. We have a little connection. You're from Liberia, and I was married to a Liberian for several years. And
Oh,
yeah, yeah. When if you recall when we talked about it, he said, "Hey, my brother, my brother." Hey, we could talk about the jollof rice, the palm butter, the check rice, the edda soup, and all the rest of that
yeah.
stuff. Yeah, some of our people, I used to joke our people about we call it ourselves African Americans, but a lot of us don't even know how to prepare or never tasted African food before, and that's kind of like been my mission for a while. Is really for a number of years is marrying our cultures and something that my drum teacher used to say. I'm giving you back what you left behind. Some of the culture and things that you kind of forgot about, but it's in your DNA, they say these days. So we
Right.
just we just got to restore it and have somebody bring it back and remind us of exactly who we are and what we're about. So, my brother, I've been watching you a while on Sonetta TV, and I have to let folks know that you have great patience sometimes, in dealing with our brothers on when we start talking about Africa and African culture and the relationship and Pan Africanism. Sometimes it can be frustrating. I know with that debate because people got different opinions, and then these days, folks is talking about the whole Aboriginal movement, and of course, black folks is all over the planet. We just talking about the oldest remains that we can go back and really synchronize ourselves to as Africa right at this point, and until things show different, we gonna roll with the punches right now that we from the motherland. We all come from Africa, and of course some of us may have already been over here prior to, but we can't forsake our brothers and that's over in the motherland. So, but since you know things has been going on, and for the last 3 or 4, 5 years, I've been paying close attention to Africa, and some things have transpired of late that I think our African American brothers and sisters need to know what's going on and keep our eyes abreast to what's going on over in Africa. So I want to talk a little bit about some things that's going on in several countries, French-speaking countries, including Niger, and what has just transpired, and what does that mean for the continent of Africa itself, and hey, we can even extend that further to African Americans here in America and abroad. What's your thoughts?
Yes, definitely. We talk about African Americans. You talk about diaspora Africans in general. Talking about the Caribbean and then the continental Africans. We share a common history. If you go back the last 400 years, we have common ancestors. We have a common culture before the great disaster happened, and some of our people were taken abroad and all of that. And in the last 400 years, what our scholars have been doing is to, first of all, reconstruct our cultural memory and say, look, this is where we came from. This is who we were. This is what we've done in order to re-establish ourselves in the global community. Because what has happened in the last 400 years was an attempt to dehumanize the black man, the black personality in the world. Doesn't matter whether he's Igbo or Hausa or he's African American or he's Caribbean. There was a global attempt to dehumanize the black personality. And this plot was so serious that it took an academic form, it took a political form, cultural form, and different form. And we struggle, our ancestors struggle a lot to bring us back into the fold of humanity and reject every information that was given out there to dehumanize our people. So the face of the revolution where we are right now on the continent of Africa, was these new nations that got independence. So thanks to Pan-Africanism that started in the diaspora, pushed the consciousness on the continent and say, look, the white folks need to leave your land and you need to be free and have your own country and maintain your own sovereignty and kind of provide protection for all black people in the world. But unfortunately, what we had after the Pan-African leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, like Sekou Toure, the man from Congo, all these people were killed and removed from power. We have a new breed of leadership. And these leadership were actually puppets. They were started selling out to the European powers. What exactly we fought against, they started re-establishing those institutions back again, miseducating our people, misappropriating our resources, giving them the resources cheap to the Europeans, and while the European become rich, the African country become impoverished. So you have black middlemen, just like what happened in the slave trade, because it wasn't the white men going into the villages literally and picking people. There was always a black middleman, a sellout. So these sellouts, unfortunately, become very powerful, and they appear to be the face of our leadership. And we don't see it many often that they are actually sellout and they are traitors of our people, and they assume huge power and they continue to sell our resources. So recently what has happened in West Africa is that there are countries called the Sahel country. When I share the slides, you're going to see, as I will discuss them very shortly. These countries found out that there are countries who are conspiring with France and terrorists to be stealing the natural resources while the people are being impoverished. So the soldiers decided to come in and overthrew all of these fake corrupt presidents and replaced them with military leaders who are trying to set the record straight and try to give power back to the people. So these are some of the things that's happening right now on the continent of Africa. Yeah.
And that's interesting because that's the tad different than with what you was getting before, because usually with every kind of, revolt, coup, or things of that nature, it's always been the young folks who actually stepped up. And that, do you think, would you say we kind of like got a different breed or a different level of consciousness going on? Because, you can't really, how can I say, talk too bad about that particular move, but when you really understand what for all these years what the French has been doing to the people, and then for to have the young folks actually, not for the sake of the thirst for power, but actually to free the people from, when you have several countries like that, actually, come together with on the same accord to try to free the people from the grasp of their oppressor. I think that's something that really we need to take note of. Your thoughts on it?
Yes, definitely. This is not the first time we had coup in
Mm-hmm.
in West African countries. We had a lot of coup in the 80s, if you remember, and then even in the 90s. So what has happened is that these so-called democratic leaders, because when democracy as imposed by America and Europe, is kind of bring all this liberal leadership into power. And what happened when these guys come to power, they make a lot of concession and sort of bad deals with French multilateral companies and say, hey, we got uranium, we got gold, we got diamond, we got cocoa. You can come take it for cheap. Take it very cheap. You don't have to build factories. You don't have to build roads. You don't have to build housing or hospitals for my people. Just take the gold and put some millions of dollars in my account. Make sure my family is safe in Paris. My immediate family have a house in New York and Paris. And we can forget about the whole nation and they can suffer. Unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
has been going on. So these military leaders have been educated. Some of them, the internet has opened up a lot of information. There's a lot going on, a lot of sensitization. Pan-Africanism have been reignited again, it's been reborn. So the information is out there and they are like, wait a minute. Why is everybody developing and everybody's making progress and we have the resources and then we are not making progress? So these soldiers, most of them, when they made the coup, these are some of the rhetorics they said, look, we are tired of having leadership that is not catering for the people. We are tired of having leadership that is protecting the interests of USA, France, Germany, and all these other European countries, but do not really care for the people. So you have, for example, the current leader of Burkina Faso, Ibrahima Traore. He's a young man in his 20s. And when he went to Russia to have a meeting with Putin, he said, look, I come from a generation that is asking only one question. How do we have a rich land, a rich estate called Africa, and yet we are the poorest in the world? Unless this question is answered, my generation will not rest. We are no longer interested in all these meetings, in all these great meetings with all the head of states having a lot of rhetorics. We are tired of it. We want to see concrete job. If you need cocoa, come and build a coffee factory in Africa. If you need gold, diamond, and bauxite, come and build a uranium factory in Africa. We can't be giving you raw materials anymore. So for me, that's a new dialogue, a new approach that we are seeing from these new leaders. The hope is they will not sell out again. That's the only hope that we are watching to see whether they mean what they say or they are just saying this to buy time or to try to buy the interest of the people, because the people are Pan-African. I tell people most of the time, because when I speak to diaspora African, they say, well, most people on the continent are not Pan-Africans. They are tribalists. They call themselves Hausa, Yoruba. They don't really care about Pan-Africanism. It is the diaspora that really speak of Pan-Africanism. I say, no, you missed the point. The people on the continent, majority, are Pan-African by conviction. They want the borders to collapse. If you do a referendum in African countries today, most people will vote against the borders. They do not want Ghana, Nigeria, and all these countries to exist. They want a United States of Africa, a powerful nation that can protect Black people. It is the political leadership that are pushing the tribalism, that are pushing the religious agenda, because they rule, they can only succeed with divide and rule. But the people themselves, they want a United States of Africa. You know that from the Afrobeat music, how they're bringing everybody together. You know this from the sport, from the culture. The people want to be together. It is the politicians and the Europeans' geopolitics that is keeping Africans separate as we speak, but not the people.
Yes, yeah. Well spoken, my brother. I guess Vince, you wanted to show, Brother Sekou, you wanted to show a couple slides or something in the
Yes.
time frame that we got. Vince, you good with that, Vince?
Yeah, he just has to use the share option if he's able to
Okay,
do so.
okay, okay.
Oh, okay. So I should let me use the share option then.
Okay. Just be mindful of the fact that there are some folks who are listening who are not watching, so they can't see what you're presenting.
Oh,
Yeah, so we don't want to be silent for too long as you figure that out.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
Um,
yeah. While you doing that, then it was. This is. I'm gonna throw this warning in right now, Brother Sekou, and the audience, to for us to look out for. We have to while you're doing that, brother, we have to understand that these countries, are doing something very bold. And for many years, France and America and the like has been really taking advantage. And I kind of categorize it as Africa has been their rental property, you know, and the dollars have to go to France before it comes back and trickle back to down to these needy countries. Now, what Brother Sekou has just outlined and talked about, that separation and the taking back, and Niger has said that, I just seen an article that you're going to stop paying 80 cent per kilogram of uranium. You're going to pay 200 euros, which is the marketplace. Now, we got to look at the warning sign. Is the mindset that these French countries, that the France is going to take in reference to that. Are they going to sit still and sit by and let this happen? So what I'm saying is that while we paying attention to what's going on, we're going to have to look at the games and the playbook that has been done in the past, to where they're going to try to bring some type of disturbances and some instability, to that particular region, to take back what they want. They're not going to sit back quietly. Unless the creator got his hands over this whole situation. But we got to watch and see, and don't get caught up in the hype of some little small disturbances and things and instabilities that may be taking place, because that has been the tactic that they have been doing to say, see, they can't govern themselves, and we have known that these negative forces has been known to play both sides and try to keep confusion going. So we got to keep our eyes peeled to that, and it don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe when you see little skirmishes and things crop up over the continent because of this, because you better believe they working to keep confusion going. All right, my brother, you ready?
yes. So, can you see my screen?
Okay, not yet.
Not yet. You have to hit present on your
Oh,
side of
I did
things.
share it. So,
Okay.
so it's not showing at all.
Not yet. Let
Oh,
me just
so then I have to go back. Let me see.
yes.
So present, I press present and share screen.
Mm-hmm.
So I go to the window and pick. So now it's sharing.
Okay.
Do you
I
still
th-
see?
yes, I'm not seeing it on my end, but let me make this suggestion. We can figure this out on the other side of the hour. So
Okay.
after noon, when we conclude the radio broadcast, we can experiment with screen sharing, and then that way you'll be
All
able to
right.
convey what you need to convey, if that's okay with you.
Okay, that's fine. We can just do question and answers, and there are many people just listening, and they
Mm-hmm.
can see the images.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, my brother. So your thoughts on what I just said about some pushback from France and America and things of that nature,
Yeah.
and also maybe touch on what's the sentiments of other countries, because they're trying to get ECOWAS and things like that to intervene. So let's get into that jargon a little bit.
Yes. So first of all, let's lay down the basis for this discussion. You see, there is an illusion of development that is sold to Africa after independence. The Europeans told them that development is when you try to imitate Europe and America and try to follow our footsteps, because we are the developed nations and you are the underdeveloped or poor countries. So in order for you to develop, you got to follow our handout, and we got to train you as people coming out of primitive life and then coming into civilization. We're now going to teach you how to be civilized, how to develop. So to do that, you need to subscribe to our institutions like IMF and World Bank, and we're going to train you to see how you develop. And many African leaders fell for this trap. But what they forgot to know is that these countries that are called developed countries in the Western world are developing at the expense of other countries. So you really cannot have a France with all the resources it has without exploitation of Niger, without exploitation of other Francophone countries. How do we know that? The French, for example, their entire electricity in their country is run by uranium, okay, the nuclear fuel made from a product called uranium. And this uranium, France does not produce it. They get it out of Niger. So everything that run their nuclear power plants, that supply their electricity in their country, come from a country called Niger. And guess what? That country, Niger, does not have electricity, except for few parts. That's a problem right there. Then you have a country like Congo that produces gold, uranium, bauxite, all type of important minerals that are made today to make all the electronics we are using, including computers and cell phones. But then in Congo, you don't have a single industry or factory that manufacture these things. So the World Bank and the IMF are trying to stir Africans that continue to sell raw materials to European world to develop their factories. Then eventually, in the future, they will come and build this factory in your country, then you can also develop. So we are saying that that's an illusion. The best way to do it is to say that these are my products. I will train my people, build the necessary institution, develop the skills of my people to process these raw materials. If you need this raw material, come here and build the factories. Then we can give our people jobs, then we can have infrastructure. So this is the problem they are having in the global community. They are selling Africa the illusion of development. Now, the Ukraine and Russian war caused a lot of problems because Russia cut the gas supply to Germany and other European countries. Now, the Europeans are running into gas crisis. They need a lot of resources to replace what Russia used to give them. So now they turn to Africa. They went to Nigeria and said, look, we want to run a pipeline out of West Africa to Europe to supply them with gas. And they needed to do all of these things at the expense of the people. So places like Niger and other places, the military said, look, we can't do that. We can't allow pipelines to be connected from Africa and down to Europe, supplying them with everything they need, while our people don't even have electricity. They don't even have clean streets. They don't even have hospitals. So the military decided to take over from these people. Now, the French interest is threatening because if all of these countries expel, like Mali expelled the French and the Burkina Faso expelled the French, now Niger is trying to expel them, it means that they will lose all this market and their interest, and it's going to affect their economy. And guess what? As we speak, the French ambassador to Niger refused to leave the country. Have you ever seen a country where the nation president said, we don't want the ambassador of this particular nation in our country? And the ambassador said, no, I can't leave. And he literally had to hide himself in the house. And they put surveillance around his house to be able to get him. And he said he will not leave the country. Why? Because they really don't exist without these countries. So when they say they are developed countries, what they really mean is that they are gangsters who are actually exploiting other nations for their own development. That's what is happening. But the problem Africa has, though, is that we have been unfortunate to have leadership in power who are actually sellouts, who are actually traitors. Now, that's where the revolution is now. How do we remove these traitors from power and replace them with Pan-African leaders? That's the dilemma that we are facing.
Mhm. That's it for sure, and it's been like that for a long time because I think a lot of people really don't. I put some stuff together and was talking about. Do you think when we was having this transatlantic situation going on for here, especially in this country in slavery, that Africans was back at home at the beach just having a good time? They was going through the same thing and going through issues as well. So it's been a problem for a long time, but I think what's going on right now, we can go back to prophetic writings and books that talk about the change going to come, and I think that we're on the cusp of this change. I believe the energy that is taking place right now is something that we really need to be paying attention to, and I think we're looking to really some big changes going on with Black folks across the globe right at this time. This great awakening, I think it is happening, and and it's something I think that is something very important for us to really understand because we African Americans has been given a certain type of image of Africa that has been negative for so long and far too long, and not knowing the root and the base of what's been going on. Folks like France and the like has been taking out leaders in Africa who wanted to do the right thing for a long time, and then we were looking and they would show us images of Africa being backwards and not progressing during the industrial age, and people need to know that that was a plot. They had to keep Africa poor before they can keep the resources. Matter of fact, some European leaders been saying, that's why the northern side of the equator united, and their job was to keep the southern equator poor and serving them. So it is make me upset when I hear some African Americans talk about what's wrong with Africa and what's going on. So it's important to know and understand that this has been a serious plot going on for hundreds of years. Your thoughts,
Yeah,
brother? Okay, cool.
definitely. Um, there's a global, I don't know if it is appropriate to say it here, but it's a global white supremacy issue that we Black folks often we overlook. The global white supremacy is very, very real and so powerful that it is affecting Asia, Africa, and everywhere. And this global white supremacy is also translated in industry, economic, education, and all of that. What has happened to the continent of Africa? People sit down and just watch these images created by the European power. What they have to do is to present to you an image of a dying continent that can save itself, and they are the savior. They used this playbook before. They used it in the 1700s, where they presented Africans as subhumans, and they were supposed to go in to save the continent. So that brought about the colonialism. It was applied. They said they were philanthropists. They were going there to save the people from what they call devil worship. They
Hey,
wanted to make them into good believers. But in
religion.
reality, they were going to steal from the people. Blyden wrote
Mhm,
about this. So
mhm.
when you look at the propaganda today, it's still the same. It is showing the continent that actually needs saving. But in reality, the paradox is that it is the continent that is saving them. Every
Ooh,
French industry, if Africa shut its door today, most of the industry in the Western world will collapse. And Africa is the only continent that can shut its door and survive for a century without contacting any other continent, because it's a natural paradise. I was born in West Africa, in the forest of Liberia, where you can literally stay in the forest or on the farm without coming to the city for months. And you will have food, you will have water, and you will have everything. God has naturally blessed the continent. But when you are blessed, the blessing comes with responsibility. Because when your house has honey, then you expect the bee to be around your house. That's what is happening. The criminals have besieged the continent, and they find out that their survival depends on the exploitation of the continent. But now the leadership question is what Africa has been. So not that we've not been had good leaders. We've had leaders like Thomas Sankara. who came to power just less than 6-7 years. He transformed a whole nation. In fact, he changed the name of the country from what the French gave it, All Vota, which has no meaning. He changed it to Burkina Faso, which means the land of upright men. The land of upright men, Burkina Faso. And within 5 years, the country that was supplied, UN used to supply them food and clothes that they are poor, he started exporting food. The country became self-sufficient in food production. He started a lot of industry in the country. The French took him out. They killed him. Patrice Lumumba, he came to power in Congo and told the people, look, we put aside our tribal differences. Let's build our culture, a unified culture. Let's put value to our natural resources. Let's build education and scientific institution. They took him out. Kwame Nkrumah, he started building industry. He transformed Ghana, and Ghana became the center of African revolution. They took him out. So they take out every revolutionary leader that come on the continent and replace them with these puppets that you guys are seeing on TV as African leaders. These guys are just masks. They are actually messengers and people sent to destroy the continent. One example I will give quickly is the current president of Nigeria. If you know him, his name is Ahmed Bola Tinubu. If you do a little research on him, you find out in 1970, he was in Chicago. What was he doing in Chicago? He was a drug lord in Chicago, where he got arrested and he forfeited $500,000, and he has a case with the FBI. And guess what? He ran to Nigeria, and all of a sudden we saw him in the realm of power, and now he's president. He's president, and guess what? He's working with foreign intelligence at the expense of Nigeria because they got dirt on him. And now he has to work for foreign power and not Nigeria. He goes for medical checkup every month to France. That's where his life depends. That means if French want to kill him, they could kill him. So he have to always make concession to people that protect his life, which is France. His family live in America, and the Americans have a dirt on him because he was a drug leader, a drug lord, and he did not win the election. They manipulated the election and made him president. Now, you have such a man leading the larger black nation on earth. And recently, when Niger coup happened, the French told him to evade Niger on their behalf. And guess what? He put the army out to go and invade Niger. It took a lot of people to come out to protest, and the Senate had to reject his request. Otherwise, he was pressurized by France to attack his neighbor, Niger, that shares border with you. Common people, common culture, and you want to attack them, launch war against them because they had a military coup. That's what we are telling the people. The men that are leading our country are traitors, are puppets. They are not our leaders. And Pan-Africanism must return to save the continent. Otherwise, all the news we're hearing about the continent will make progress is all going to be a fiasco, because these middlemen are as dangerous as those who did slavery in the 1700s.
Wow. I'm glad you said that, brother. Well said. Yeah, we're going to bring our brother Vince Robinson into the conversation. I know he's chopping at the bit to jump in and say a few things in reference to you. Go ahead, my brother Vince.
Well, I just wanted to agree with our dear brother on so many levels. The fact that he pointed out that young people are not beholden to the same baggage that the other leaders have been, because as you said, they have been sellouts. They are basically the middleman between the colonialist powers and the people. But I think one thing that we have to look at is the power of definition that has been in place all this time. When you talk about Africa, people often look at it as a place of poverty. They look at it as a place where people are poor. But the fact of the matter is, and again, this is something that Brother Sekou pointed out, is all of those resources, the wealth of that continent cannot allow you to define it as poor or underdeveloped. And what the colonialist powers did is they came in, they brought religion, they took control of politics, and by that they've been able to divide and conquer the people of that continent. I'm mindful of the fact that Muammar Gaddafi was involved in an effort to unify the continent of all of those different states, and also to have an impact on the currency. He wanted to back it by gold, and he did a lot of things within his country to lift the people up. So the people who are controlling the planet, so to speak, decided that that wasn't a good idea, and that's why they took him out. But what the media does is they demonize certain leaders, and then they get everybody to buy into the fact that that is a person that should not be in power, and they remove him. And then you don't have an outcry on the part of, or an outcry on the part of people around the globe, because they have demonized that person so effectively. I really have backed away from using the term white supremacy because it's a false narrative. It is Africans who civilized the planet. It was Africans who brought about plumbing systems, who were the originators of the literary systems that we have around the continent and around the world. It was Africans who created things like math and science and whatnot. So the world is taking advantage of those things that we have brought, and then they're using their power to define us into a place of second-class citizenship, when in fact we have everything that we need. Brother, you pointed out, being in Liberia, that you could be in that place and have everything that you needed to survive. But we have gotten to a place where we depend on others to define us and to allow us, and that's really a pejorative word in my view, but to allow us to exist in a way. So we really do have to grow up and seize the power. I say all the time, if Africans said, okay, no more coltan from our countries, that means that no laptops, no phones, no computers can be created. We have to stand up and say, no more will you exploit us. The another issue is globalization. You have globalization and nationalism at play at the same time. And the people who are trying to control this world want to implement a global strategy to take control of us. But again, when we stand up and say, no, we respect our own ability to be sovereign, then we will take control. What you pointed out about uranium is key. And I want people to know that some of this animosity that we have between nations is an illusion. When you look at the whole Ukraine war, and you look at United States instigating sanctions against Russia and freezing billions of dollars in assets. But one thing that they did not do is that they did not cut off the supply of uranium from Russia to the United States. How can it be that you're at war with a country, but at the same time you're willing to accept uranium from them? That doesn't make sense. And then when you look at what you pointed out about that pipeline going through Niger, and the folks in Niger saying, okay, wait a minute, we're not going to let you plow this pipeline through our country and us not get any benefit from it. That comes as a result of leadership that is willing to stand up and say, no, we're not going to be exploited. So those are just a few of the thoughts that I wanted to get out there. But I fully agree, brother. It's time for young folks to step up. And what you see going on in Burkina Faso, once again, you talked about definition. We're not going to be that country. We're going to be the name of this country that means something to us and our people. That's what has to take place in all of these countries, because there is, as you said, there's tribalism. Then that's a very real thing. But there's also an agreement that as tribes or nations within these false borders that were created by Europeans, we have to maintain the integrity of our culture. We have to maintain the integrity of our people. And most importantly, we have to begin to be productive. What happened in Ghana, and I'm not really a fan of Akufo-Addo, even though I shouldn't be saying this, because I do desire to be a citizen of Ghana. But I'm just not enamored with the idea of giving us this false illusion that you're operating on the benefit and the behalf of the people, but at the same time, the people in your country don't respect you because they see you to a certain extent as a sellout. When I looked at what happened during the past 3 years and the fact that in order to get into Ghana, you had to pay a fee of $150 for a test and then pay another fee of $150 for a test when the rest of the world had said, okay, well, those tests really aren't what they are supposed to be. But you were holding up Africans from the diaspora who wanted to come home and had to play by your rules in order to come home. That didn't really sit well with me. So I'm gonna step off the soapbox, but I'm really pleased to hear you say what you are saying. And this is something else. The whole idea that we're not one people. We got to get over that. You know, when you first started speaking, brother, it was obvious to me that you have a love for all Africans everywhere in the world. And one thing that has been very effective is that we see it as an us and them situation. But when you go home and you see people who look like you realize there's no difference. The only difference is you might sound a little different because you've been speaking a language that was given to you by someone else as well as having your own. And there are so many different African language, so many different dialects. Just like in America, you have different dialects. You know, if you live in the South, you sound a certain way. If you live in the North, you sound a certain way. But you're all still the same people. We're all one people. We're all one love. And when we wake up and realize that we're one people, then we can use those resources to lift ourselves up, to empower those countries to be what they are, who they are, and to live within their sovereignty. That's a real key phrase, sovereignty. Folks really need to understand what sovereignty means. I'm stepping down.
All right, my brother. All right. Question. Just something, brother Sekou, I wanted to touch on a little bit, and we may continue the conversation. You recently was in a debate with one of our good brothers on with Sonetta TV, and I believe the debate was African spirituality versus science. Which one is the best for uh, you know Africans and African American people. And I mean, your thoughts with this African spirituality, because I'm really starting to sink my teeth into this African sacred science, some would call it, versus the Western religion that we have received. Because the old saying was before the Europeans came in, they had the land. I mean, the Africans had the land and they had the Bible. When they left, we had the Bible, they had the land. So your thoughts on how uh, destructive or how profitable or how whatever you might want to say westernized religion has been and done far as the people in the continent is concerned, and your thoughts on how the people are dealing with it, and do you think going back to African sacred traditions and things like that would be beneficial to the people and what we can do over here in the Americas?
Okay, I
You got
was.
yourself okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Brother Vincent, for kind of highlighting some of the important points we discussed here. Brother Antonio, your questions is very loaded. I will have to unpack them little by little. First, let's deal with the debate I had with the brother, African American brother called Ankh. His name is Ankh. So we discussed African spirituality versus science. And what I did explain in that debate is, first of all, the word versus science. It shows, first of all, that we are operating from a Eurocentric perspective, where they like to put dichotomy between everything. And for us, it's not like that's not how the Africans see the reality. For us, everything have to be holistic. We have to look at all discipline and see how they work in terms of improving human life. Science, but like the brother said, it was founded by African. African laid the foundation of science. The first mathematical papyrus, when you look at the papyrus of Moscow, when you look at the Iber papyrus, the medical papyrus, you see all the scientific term that you are looking for today. Words like tep accept, accurate method of analysis. You find all the medical terms, how to even do diagnosis of people's heart and all of these things. You find them and not just ancient Egypt. You find that some of these traditions go way back. You see in Kush, you see it even on the continent where writings was not as democratized like it was in Egypt, but you still find some of the way they approach things is very, very scientific. Now, when it comes to spirituality, because we are using English language and European languages, so sometimes when you try to translate some words out of African languages, what you do is that you kind of dilute the terminologies. It gets very, very much diluted and even sometimes corrupted. So you won't find, for example, the word spirituality in an African language. What you will find very close is a wisdom tradition. The wisdom tradition is people having a deep contemplative thought about the meaning of life. Okay, we can do science. We can build roads. We can be able to study our environment. We can invent stuff. But what is the purpose of life? Why should I have moral behavior towards someone else? Why should I treat animals right? Why should I treat another human being right? In fact, what is my purpose on this planet? So these were deep questions of life that needed to be answered in order for a civilization to even be built, so that even the science would be built in trying to protect that very ideology or view of life. So African will not talk about religion. They will talk about their perception of reality. That's what they will talk about. So I was telling Ankh, if you were to walk in an African kingdom, you wouldn't have asked somebody on the street, do you believe in God? Because the question supposes that I must be a believer or unbeliever. You want to put me in those two boxes. It's a European approach. You would have asked a person in an African kingdom, what's your perception of reality? And the person will say, well, I believe I'm part of something greater than myself. I believe that reality, as I see with my eyes, is a summary of the totality of reality. I think there is something greater than ourselves, and we are part of everything and everything around us. And that which is responsible in making everything and everything being one, we can give it a name and call it the creator. So it was what we call the cosmic theology, the perception that creation have one single origin. Everything in the universe have one single origin. That's how Africans see it. And that very single origin, by whatever name called, is divine. This is the realization that they have. And because everything had a very one cosmic origin, means therefore, I am everything and everything. The land, the water, the plant, and the animals are actually an aspect of the one. Therefore, Ubuntu, I am because we are. So the people, the community before the self, environment before my personal ego. So every scientific invention must take into account the value of life, the value of totality of existence, which we are lacking today in modern science. It is driven by capitalism, is driven by power, by greed, the ability to control other people, destroy, as you have in Ukraine. The essence of this weapon is to kill, to do mass destruction. It wasn't to build humanity. It wasn't to make life better for the totality of humanity. So it is the lack of spirituality in the Western worldview and science that is leading the world to a very catastrophic end. That's what I wanted to show to him. So it's not a question of putting a dichotomy and say, if I'm spiritual, therefore I reject science. No, spirituality is seeking meaning to life. And one who seeks meaning into life accepts all truth. If you say water boil 100 degrees as a scientist, as a spiritual person, if I test it and water boil 100 degrees, I accept. I have no reason to argue against scientific fact. What I can contest is the ethics in science, the morality in science, and the purpose for that science. If the purpose is not to build humanity, it is not to develop the earth, but it is to destroy the planet, a global warming, to destroy the planet, just to get oil from the ground, we have to kill thousands of species, then such a science need to be reviewed. That's what I was trying to explain to him. So
wow.
When it comes to do with progress, I think one of the things that have slowed the progress of Black people, I would say, is the lack of a unified culture and ancestral solidarity. Because after the 400 years of our suffering, we have been divided into several groups. Some are calling themselves Black Christians. Some are saying their ancestors are Abraham. So, like for me, for example, I'm a Madingo. I was born in a Muslim family. We've been Muslim since 7th century. Okay, my name, my dad gave you Abdul Malik. So I sat down and realized, okay, every evening when I pray as a Muslim, at the end of my prayer, there's something we call Salatul Ibrahim. It's called the prayer of Abraham. And it goes like this. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Ibrahim wa ala ahlil Ibrahim. Kama salaita ala Muhammad wa ahlul Muhammad. So it's, oh God, blessed Abraham and the family of Abraham. In other words, God blessed Abraham and the people of Abraham, which are the Jews and the Arabs. God bless Muhammad and the people of Muhammad. In other words, I'm praying for the ancestors and the children of the Arab world and the Middle Eastern people. So I said, wait a minute. What about Marcus Garvey? What about Malcolm X? What about Kwame Nkrumah? What about these ancestors who laid down their life for me to be able to be considered as a human being? So if I'm Christian, I can't pray for Malcolm X because he was a Muslim. So if I'm Muslim, then now I can't pray for Martin Luther King because I believe he was a Christian Baptist. So I said, this divided people that we have, it has fragile our struggle. It has reduced the power that we really have. So for me, I take African spirituality as a very, for political reason, which I know that for ancestral solidarity can lead to a very powerful force in the world. And I also believe that culturally, it can bring a lot of positive psychology in our community. It can lead to discipline. It can lead to spiritual exercise. It can lead to a lot of character reform. Now, what I do kick against is when we say go back to African spirituality, some people think that now we must go back and just do exactly what the ancestors did without review, because ancestors were limited to their time. They were doing some rituals that were relevant to their time. So today, I need a spirituality that is relevant to my time. So I go back and get a spirituality, but it's a strategic return. I get back some of the relics and emblems of spirituality that can be useful to my time. I'll take Ma'at, for example, in ancient Egypt. My going for Ma'at is not just morality. It's not just me putting that goddess on the wall and putting the 42 commandments and say, that this is Ma'at. Ma'at means today, as a social worker, I mean that I bring balance in my community. It means that the distribution of wealth is the definition of economy. It means that my ma'at means that there must be justice for people, the poor and the rich. In an ideal African community, the class must be reviewed, where the wealth must go down to the people. That will be ma'at. I will understand ma'at today as if anybody aggress my community, another community come and kill a child in my community, I make sure that we get justice. Economically, I will go after their company. Militarily, we will go after them. I make sure that there is reciprocity, that you don't kill a black man and go free. That's my art. So that's the way I will project the spirituality today, not just necessarily burning candles. Yeah, the rituals are good, but now we must put the philosophy to work. That's what the ancestors did.
Okay, my brother, we're going to interrupt just for a moment. Our listeners can continue to hear what we are talking about if they go to Facebook, go to the 360 Info Network page. They can go to my page. They can also go to YouTube and go to my page, and they'll be able to continue this conversation because it is very necessary, very vital, and very informative. So we're going to invite folks to continue to listen. by going to those respective places.
And
If
to the journey, they can go to the journey too there with
Yeah,
Antonio. It's there. Go ahead.
go to Lynn's YouTube channel, and The Journey is the
Mm-hmm.
name of it, with
With Antonio.
Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you can go there and continue to watch this broadcast. A few other things that I want to share since you brought up our brother Ankh, because it's a deep situation, but I'm glad that you were able to stand up. I'm also wanting to thank our engineer for making this broadcast possible. He does a great job of facilitating for us. His name is Tone Harley. Thank you so much, brother. To those who are listening on AM 1490 WERE, as always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your best day. Peace to you, and continue to watch us on Facebook and YouTube. So we got just a few moments here, and we are going to continue our conversation. Brother, you can continue with the point that you were making, Brother Hamtonio, if you want to interject. And also, let's work out getting those visuals up, because now we are live streaming as opposed to being on the radio.
All right. Yeah, yeah, brother. He was. I wanted to give you the high five several times for what you were saying, brother. I would love for you to continue with your point, and we're dealing with the religious, because, again, folks look at that has been the divisive entity that has been really this allowing the Europeans to come in and do what they have done over the centuries to separate us, because we know through the playbook they take any kind of disagreement between tribes or what have you, and they exploit that and have those two factions working against themselves, and they always usually reap the benefits from it. So my brother, something is on you. You can
Right.
continue if you want. Mhm.
Yeah. So at the point I was making to him, then when it comes to religion and spirituality, I've told people that one of the things Black people don't need today is the religion, and all Abrahamic religion, I will say. The reason is, the first reason is a political reason, strategic geopolitical reason. When you look at West Africa today, apart from the European exploitation, most of the war that you hear about is the Islamic Jihad. The Islamic jihadists are people who have been trained by this Saudi Wahhabist ideology, which insists that Islam must be imposed on the world, that they have been commissioned by the Creator to impose their religion on the world. They have to do it peacefully when they are in minority, then they have to do it violently when they have the military ability to do so. And this has played out throughout the history of Africa, back to the Ghana Empire, the Wagadu Empire, the real Ghana Empire. When the Muslim came in, the primary sources tell us that they were settled at the outskirts of the cities. And the king, who was not Muslim, and the people were not Muslim then, when the people now you would call, how they call them, the Bambara and the Mandinka and the other group, the Mande groups, they were all there. But they allowed the Muslim to settle. When the Muslim outnumbered them, they invited the Almoravi jihadists from Morocco. That's how they ran down the Wagadu or Ghana Empire. And most people that you call today diaspora African or African American, some of them were taken out after the collapse of that Wagadu Ghana Empire and the disperse of our people. Some restarted new empire like Mali Empire, Songhai, and some people were captured during those moments and went into slavery and all of that. So it was the collapse. Islam was at the foundation of the collapse of some of our empire. So historically, it is not good morally for us to continue to insist on holding something that was at the beginning of our downfall. It's very necessary to know this. And Islam, historically, Muslim scholars were the first to sell the idea that the Black man is cursed because of the stories of Noah. The Jewish and Muslim scholars were the first to start that propaganda. The Christian joined later. I know people always blame the Christians and the Bible, but they came late into the game. The Muslims were the starter of this propaganda of the curse of Ham. And they started it. And now today, when you look at West Africa, most of the countries that are unstable is due to Islamic Jihad. In Nigeria, the Boko Haram. In Mali, you have this Azawad. In Niger, you have the Islamic State. They are destabilizing these countries because for them, the purest form of Islam must be established. So for me, it will be a very big strategic and historical blunder if we continue to keep ourselves in this Abrahamic religion. We will never be unified. For the Christians are less aggressive today in terms of militarily. We don't see the crusaders moving around with guns, attacking people. In West Africa, Christians are not usually involved in physical violence, but intellectually, they are connected with Europe. Most of the Christian churches in Africa, their job is to stop revolution. When the people want to rise against government, they tell the people, no, don't do it, pray, because the Lord is coming soon, and the Lord is coming to take us out. You don't need to fight for the kingdom of this world. You know, you have accidents because the road is bad, not because the government didn't fix the road, it's because there is a demon in your ancestors that is making you to have accident on the road. So they create this false narrative for the people, and the people refuse to wake up to the reality that the real demons are the leaders. The real demons are the leaders who refuse to make the roads. And in order for revolution to happen in Africa, the Christian church must be silent on the continent, because their evangelism activities is telling the people, don't protest, don't rise up, don't overthrow the government. Christ is coming to take you out soon. And they also collude with the Western churches and to always be able to be on the side of the elite, not on the side of the people. That's why the richest people in West Africa, apart from the political leader, are the pastors. They have the private jets. They have all the mega churches. But in the same community where they are from, the people do not have hospitals. The people do not have roads. So we are saying these religions must go. Now, are we saying we have to violently go close these churches and mosques? No. We will do that, then we are going to cause another war among Black people. But what we need to do is the re-education. The education needs to be out there to sensitize our people that ancestral solidarity is necessary. Then the historical narrative of how Africa came into contact with Islam and Christianity should prevent us from taking this religion forward into the future. They were helpful in some moment. We must say that in Mali, Timbuktu, Islamic civilization helped start Timbuktu University. It started a lot of intellectual movement. In America, we see the Nation of Islam participating in the fight against the people. But these were just short bridges that we crossed. Now we must make a headway. We must carve a new future. We use them at a certain point to fight revolution, but we see now that they are not beneficial in the long term, because when a Muslim who is supposed to be in a Black revolution goes to Mecca, he's going to become an Arabized Muslim. When Malcolm left America and went into Saudi Arabia, he did not come back as a Black Muslim. He came back as an Arabized Muslim, no longer speaking like the Black Muslim were speaking. That's what you need to know. That's why I think African spirituality becomes an instrument of our unity, become an instrument of our solidarity in the world today. And it's very, very important that we revived it, and not reviving it to say, well, if the ancestors used to do this, we must do exactly. I think we must reform it. That's what Diop said, reform and put it in a better shape that it can serve our need, political, economic, and spiritual needs today.
I want to jump in and just point out something that many people may not be aware of. But when you look back at the history of religion and you see that the original prototype involved the concept that all men are divine beings. And then you had the impact of Christianity. And when that happened, the switch became not all men are divine beings, but only one man is a divine being, and that is Jesus. When that paradigm shift happened, then you saw a shift in the way people perceive their relationship to God, and it externalized God. But back in the days of Kemet, everybody understood who they were and what their relationship to God was. And as you pointed out, there's a fusion between science and nature. So we used our understanding of science to our advantage. So when you look at the great scholars like Imhotep, when you look at all of the things that were in that library that was in Alexandria that folks said disappeared when it burned down, but in actuality, it was just appropriated and it was transferred somewhere else and then was given back to the world as a European perspective that we've all bought into and ascribed to. When we wake up and understand who we are and we understand our relationship to God or that thing that we call God, you know, it's interesting, brother Sekou. We didn't have a term for God because we had an understanding of what our relationship to that entity is and was.
Yeah.
So when we go back to the original prototype, you know, the 10 commandments, for instance, were taken from the 42 confessions. Okay. So even the 10 commandments is not an original concept. It was diluted and it was switched around to fit an agenda based on what was given to us in a book that was used to control our lives. When you look at the scriptures, there's a scripture that says, slaves, basically be obedient to your masters. You know, this is what Brother Antonio was talking about when he said they came to Africa, they gave us the Bible, and then they walked away with our land because they altered our conception, our understanding of our relationship to God. You know, you brought up our brother Ankh, and I think you're speaking of Ankh West, if I know who you're speaking of, whether it was him or not. You know, that whole thing about science was something that was used to exploit us because we depended on a science that was not in the interest of the people. It was the interest of an agenda to control people and to alter humanity. These scientists are involved in something called transhumanism, and they actually think that they are able to replace what we perceive as God. They want to alter human beings so that we're not in our original form, but we're in this new form where they can use artificial intelligence to affect our thoughts, to affect our physiology, to basically change what we are as beings. But it's not in their place to replace what was responsible for the creation of everything. So I just wanted to point that out and just to get to the idea that it's not about believing, it's about knowing. It's not about believing who you are, it's about knowing who you are. And when you know who you are, then these silly arguments that we're having about us being aboriginal to America or aboriginal to Africa, it was pointed out in this broadcast that humanity originated in Africa and we migrated to all parts of the planet. Dr. Runoko Rashidi was very effective in presenting that concept, and other scholars have done the same thing. You know, that this whole idea of us not, you know, being involved in what they call the slave trade, and those places in Africa have no significance. As a matter of fact, some of those places in Africa where we were taken from and brought over here to the United States are still there. And the evidence of it is when you go there, you feel something. Brother, I stood in that dungeon in Cape Coast, and I felt the presence of the ancestors, and nobody, and I repeat, nobody can tell me that that wasn't real. It is very real. It did happen, but it does not define our entire existence because we've been on the planet for hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
you see my
mhm.
screen there?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So just to buttress what you said about this, by the way, is an artwork done by a lady called Patricia Pacini. But it was a protest in protest for what scientists are doing currently. So you see that from National Geographic, this where this article comes from. It's a human peak hybrid created in the lab. This article was written in January 26, 2017. So you can read it down here. It said, in a remarkable, if likely controversial feat, scientists announced today that they have created the first successful human-animal hybrid. The project proves that human cells can be introduced into a non-human organism, survive, and even grow inside a host animal, in this case, a pig. So this hybrid stuff, they've started it very simple, but now they are going to want to actually create a real half human and half pig, so that they can harvest the organ anytime a powerful person is sick and they need organ and what have you, the hospital can be able to supply this. So the question here, if we start creating hybrid, an animal in human body that look like us, and start harvesting its body, what would be the morality and ethics? Now to kill a human being will be as simple as anything, because if I can look at a thing created by me that has a human form, but then if your instincts immediately, if you are a natural person, your instinct repudiate this immediately, you see it, because it's very catastrophic. It's going to play on our morality. It's going to play on the way we view humans, because if you are used to killing a being like this daily just to make human power, doing it to a human being will not cost you anything. It's not going to even move you. So this is the dangerous path they are pushing science. The Chinese, it's heard that they have already done this, and the Americans and other people are hiding it. But this is National Geographic. You find this article, and these are things that are going on, and that's why I'm saying the spirituality become important for us to redirect science for the benefit of life and humanity, not for the benefit of capitalist, powerful individuals making decisions that would be catastrophic for humanity. I'll show one more thing quickly on my slides before I move to the other discussion. Okay. I think, I don't have access to the slides. What happened? Can I stop sharing it and reshare it again?
Yes.
Yeah, so that I can have access to the slides. Uh,
All right.
okay.
That was a pretty grotesque image that you just shared with us, brother.
Yes.
I can't even imagine seeing something like that in real life.
They are on it already. They've gone far, and they okay. This this is this book is called Spies in the Congo, written by Susan Williams. In this book, you find a letter, original letter signed, written by Albert Einstein, one of the greatest scientists of the 20th century. He wrote a letter to uh, to the President Roosevelt on the 2nd of August, 1939. And guess what he tell Roosevelt? He tell President Roosevelt to go into Congo to go get uranium to build a nuclear bomb. This, he advised President Roosevelt to go into Congo and get this bomb in order to counter the Soviets. The Nazi, and they goes into Congo, and that led to the death of Lumumba and other destruction that happened into Congo. And many years later, in 1945, America will use that particular bomb to destroy people in Japan. Here is a scientist that we celebrate around the world. And here he write a letter to the US president, and his letter has led to the destruction of millions of lives. And even today, the planet is under threat because of this one particular invention. So that tells you that science for the sake of science can even lead to the destruction of humanity. Science
Yes.
will be for the sake of something higher than it, and which is spirituality. I stop.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point, and I'm sure you used that in your debate when you was with Ox for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, One interesting thing is that, and I try to point out to the people about nature and indigenous people. Because if you talk about the meta nature, which is nature. I was listening to a video about the Kan people in Ghana, and if people recall some of the Native Americans, how all these indigenous people kind of looked at that the great source. They when they talk about God's spirituality or the creator, we call him the creator. They call him the great source, and things that nature that encompass all. They're not separating, because the picture that Western nice religions, has painted for us is, some man sitting in the clouds and watching what we do. But, you know, the Africans and indigenous people kind of relayed and made you understand that whatever this thing is it's encompassed everything, and it's almost too difficult to even explain what it is, but we know it's there, you know. And I find it strange because of indoctrination and assimilation and things like that, that we here, these African Americans here in this country, follow a system or belief system that adheres to the European worldview of things. When you got people in India with 1.4 billion people, people in China, 1.4 billion people in Africa, 1.4 billion people, the Native Americans when they was highly populated, all understanding nature and incorporating nature and their culture into their traditions and spirituality. But these people look down at it, and causes us to look down when people even talk about ancestors, and acknowledging your ancestors and having your ancestors to work for you. But we would accept angels, which is nothing but ancestors and people working in your behalf in the spiritual realm. But this how deep the psychosis go. Your thoughts there, Brother Sekou?
Yeah, it's very important, and I tell people your spirituality should not be something that will work against your progress. When you look at Japan, I use Japan as an example always. They have a spirituality called the Shintoism. Shinto means the way of the gods. And in the Shinto, it is built around their understanding that there is a cosmic origin, there's source of origin that we don't know for sure. Because science begins everything with Big Bang. And Big Bang 13 billion years ago, for some reason, certain matter, elements, how they call it, subatomic particles, just decided to explode. And then the unintelligent particles exploded, and then they created intelligent beings and planet and everything. It's because it's science, we just accept it. But in reality, what caused that? What caused those forces to be together like that and explode? What was their mission? What was their end goal to be able to? Because the idea of nothing, there is no equation for nothingness. We have never seen an example of what nothingness is. So the origin of all of life become very, very important. In fact, if you don't define that origin, your civilization has no meaning. If you don't define it, because it's what going to define your morality. It is that origin that's going to define how you treat life, how you treat people. So what the Westerners want to do is to skip that area. They skip it. They say, we don't know. It's just Big Bang. Now let's focus on the making the science. The science for what then? That's where the question is. So for the African, that origin, we need to rely on refined attention and observation and patterns in nature. So when they look at patterns in nature, life come into being when you have M and F, the masculine and feminine. It is the masculine and feminine, not necessarily men and women, but the masculine and energy coming together always produce life. But if you multiply that in nature and take it backward, you will push it backward until you will go back to cosmic zero. And that cosmic zero must contain within itself all the necessary ingredients to bring life into being, both masculine and feminine. That's why you see the image of Amun and his wife in Kemet. People see that statue and they'll say, oh, this is God and his wife. No, you don't understand. They are telling you the invisible cosmic origin that have brought what I had within itself all the necessary ingredient, the formula, which is masculine and feminine, to bring life into existence. So for the Africans, it was not a question of do you believe in God? That question don't even exist. It is a question of what is your perception of reality. And the cosmic origin is the basis on which all of reality is based. So I can't be an atheist. It makes no sense in my culture. It makes no sense in my language to say that the cosmic origin or the totality of existence does not exist. It means then to say that we don't exist. So such a question or discussion cannot arise in African epistemology. That's why I told
Mm,
Uncle and I tried to explain to him, when you call yourself black atheist, you are no different from somebody who calls himself black communist, black socialist, black democrat. All you do is to pick European idea and paint it black. You are not the original thinker. I don't
right.
respect you because you are a proxy. A proxy, you live in the image of other people. You don't really have an original thought. So
Mm,
for us as people, when we look back into our ancestral thought, the cosmic origin of life is what we regard as the creator. And it's, you don't have to externalize it. You don't have to be looking to the sky. You don't find anywhere in African stories or the Kemet where you see a god opening the sky from the cloud and coming down and doing all type of stuff. That's not how this it is. That's why all these literal traditions need to be put aside. And we need to revive our spirituality and
mm,
establish our ancestral solidarity, establish our relationship with nature, and understand, like Brother Vincent said, we are divine. And I have it in one of my slides. I don't have the time to share my debate slides with Unc. Maybe we can establish a time one day and do that. When the book of the book of when Ra was affirming his creation, he said, I created man from the tears of my eyes. This is the divine speaking now. Now, when Professor Obenga said, what the Egyptian were saying right there is that you are aspect of the divine. This is not a master and servant or sinners versus holy God situation. This is not what they are describing. They are describing you are divine beings, and you are divine being. That means you have responsibility. You have no excuse for your existence. You only need to bring harmony and balance into nature. You are divine being. In some way, you cause your own existence. You cause your own existence within the creator. You are just an extension of the one. You are an extension of the creator itself. So there is no excuse for you
yes,
to
yes.
exist. You don't want to put your sin on anybody and blame any external force. You are what exists, and you need to take responsibility. That's why when you find the 42 negative confession, it is, I have not done this. I have not done this. Because a God must be able to affirm his responsibility. It must be able to accept his own action and take responsibility for it. So these are things
Mm,
that need to be retaught in our society and bring about development, because development for us is not to imitate Paris, to imitate USA or Germany. Development is the ability to produce the material and immaterial condition for your survival. Once you can do that, you are developed. I don't care if you are a tribe in the bush. If you can produce the material and immaterial condition for your survival, you are developing.
very, very good, man. Very good. I hope we got that first part of it. When I created myself from myself or something that I forgot how it goes exactly. My computer was acting up when it, so I hope the people got that one because that's deep. That's deep in understanding that, because when I was listening to the one Ghana, a Khan brother, he was talking about, that, he was saying that God is, for the sake of saying that God isn't the source of life. He was saying God is life,
Right.
and his energy is, we talk about it biblically, that his energy being in everything, And I used to say, I've been saying for 30 some years that I talk about, say every time you talk to God, you ain't got to be looking up at the sky. His life force energy is in everything, and our ancestors tried to explain that, and through their culture and traditions, and I think they did. But just when the Europeans came on the scene, they just didn't understand. I want to inject one quick piece in by our good brother Joshua Mapunga.
Sorry, quick. I have half an hour to be here now.
Say that one more time.
I have half an hour, 30 minutes to.
Okay, no
Yeah.
problem, brother. Yeah, I was wondering about that. Yeah, we're not gonna hold you up too much longer, there, brother. Yeah, I just want to ask one quick question. I want to interject one piece and then let Vince interject, and then we can close it. Um, Joshua Wapunga was talking about something. I think maybe Julius Malana might have hinted on it as well in South Africa. When we're going back to statesism and we're thinking about countries and running countries, and he made a good point that a lot of the countries in Africa are still adopting, constitutions from their colonizing entities, and how they govern themselves and things like that. He made suggestion of actually going back to the African tradition way of doing business and running a country and in a community. Your thoughts on that? I think we probably can get more mileage out of that because I think Go ahead, my bro.
Yeah, I think one of our greatest scholars, Sheikh Anta Diop, actually said that we must uh, after we've gone through this colonialism and all of that, what we need to do is to rehabilitate our culture. And the rehabilitation means that we actually go back and do the creative reconstruction, get the ideas and the philosophies that our ancestors have developed, bring them and evaluate them, critique them, and create a very better platform. We could even save the world from the catastrophe that the drain that the Europeans are leading us to. So we should not pick capitalism because they pick capitalism. We shouldn't pick socialism because they pick socialism. Democracy for the sake of democracy. We have to look at it holistically, look at our situation, look at our history, and say, what system can help the Black community? What system can help
Yes.
Black people? What
Yes.
can help us to be able to control our natural resources and be on the top and not to be at the bottom? That's what we should look at. We shouldn't say because when Karl Marx wrote his work, he wasn't having Black people in mind. He wasn't having our unique experiences in mind. When these people were writing their books and their story, it was not universal. They were applying it to European experience. So now when we are to write it, we have to put it into our experience, into our own experience. Why is democracy failing in Africa? Because democracy is about the majority rule, and then the minority have to keep silent and wait until they are majority. So it's an exclusion process. So now, sometimes if the minority are powerful, then they buy the majority and then they be able to put themselves in power and be able to control the people. So what you see in Africa in result, democracy has become a tribal exercise, where the political parties have become an area for every tribe. So if I'm in SDP and I'm Madingo, all Madingo vote for me. If I am in APP and then I'm Akan, and all Akan people vote for me. So now we have to revise it. We have to look at this political party system. It is now trying to weaponize our tribal differences. And we already know we have that weakness. So let's find a system that doesn't create this divide. Let our thinkers get to job. Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, he said, I will not be socialist, I will not be communist, and I will not be capitalist. I will create what we call Ujamaa. And people were like, what is that? No, it can't be a serious theory. He said, well, Ujamaa is the community before an individual. And that system will, first of all, I will start with it by making a unified language. All ethnic groups keep your language, but there has to be a unified language, a language of science, a language we can use for commerce, education, and learning. And he chose Kiswahili. Today, Kiswahili has become one of the most recognizable African language on the continent because of one man vision, Julius Nyerere. And now most East African countries, even the African Union, have adopted Kiswahili. Now, when it comes to democracy and economic system, there are so many traditional institutions in Africa that were very much stable. They had kingdoms that were more bigger than any modern African countries. And they were different ethnic groups. How did they manage it? How did Ouagadougou Empire, that constituted modern Mauritania, Senegal, part of Mali, all put together. It was one empire called the Ouagadougou Empire. How did the ancient king of that time, who never went to Cambridge, they never went to any kind of Harvard University, they were able to manage those people with different ethnic groups, and there was peace? How did they do it? These are questions we are not asking. How did the Mali Empire of Sunjata Keita write the first constitution in the world called Kurukan Fuga, even though it was orally transmitted, where he gave over 40 laws of how human rights, protection of women, protection of animals and environment, he gave those laws and they became the constitution of the republic. That was long before Magna Carta. So now we need to sit down and redefine democracy in our own context and experience, define economic in our own context and experience, and start following these people blindly. Because one thing you should know about the West, they are very hypocritical in their ideology. They change the goalpost each time. They will say, for example, we need to go to clean energy. We have to stop the pollution of the environment, the Yield campaign. We have the Paris climate. But as soon as they ran into crisis and the Ukraine war happened, they all went back to the coal. They violated the treaty that they signed yesterday. But they told the African, you have to follow the treaty. But they violated. Right now, they said, don't do business with Ukraine. Russia. Don't buy the grain. But guess what? All European countries, including America, they are buying nuclear fuel from Russia. So in reality, they play a gangster game. These are gangsters. We need to be true and use the real word. They are not respecting any rules. They are not respecting any law. If it benefits them, they fix it. I told Ankh one time, I say, I respect the contribution of our people, our Africans, the diaspora, African American. They have become the moral backbone of America. They have done a lot to make America what it is today. But I say, let me tell you something. The day the white boys stop benefiting from America, he will burn it down. The only reason he's still protecting that flag and said the republic will protect and be patriotic is because they still benefit largely from the corporation called America. The day the white minority stop benefiting, they will burn it down just the way they burn down Black Wall Street. When they don't benefit from something, they burn it down. So we need to know that. That's why we don't need to follow no international rule, no international law. We need to follow rules that work for our people, that work for ourselves. So I personally, there are many scholars who are working on different theory, economic theory, political theory. One of them, he's one of the good scholars, but he writes in French. His name, I can't recall his name right now, but he wrote on Diop ideology, on politics, economics, and he actually created a theory that can be very, very necessary. I mean, when implemented, it will help African countries. Even this democracy of sectionalizing people, dividing them, we have to look for a democracy of concession, a democracy that brings people together, that minority have their own power. Because how the kings work in Africa, people thought African kings were just dictators who could rise up and say, I said this and then it happened. That's the reality, is not what happened. You need to go find out. Every ethnic group was represented in the king palace. And the king only represents the mouthpiece of the elders. They sit down and they debate. When the concession is reached, the king only pronounces what has been reached. If he violates any community, they will be against his kingdom. So he always have to bring everybody on board to be able to have a common understanding. We need to go back to that, so that every election cycle, we don't keep killing people on the street. We have to revise all of these dangerous things we pick up from these people, thinking that there is no alternative. Immediately you start thinking that there is no alternative to democracy, there is no alternative to capitalism, you have put yourself in a box. As thinking being, as divine being, there is no limit to our consciousness. We can always come up with a better idea. We just need to get ourselves out of the boxes they fix us in. And I believe many African scholars have developed theories now, a lot of them, but the mainstreams are not accepting them because they want to be part of their so-called global community.
I want to jump in and just mention the term that you brought up a few moments ago, and that was hypocrisy. You know, one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not kill. But in the same sentence, you use your religion as a justification for going out and killing people to force them to adopt your religion. I mean, that's to me, that's really a great hypocrisy. You know, when you talk about democracy, once again, that's really an illusion. Here in the United States, democracy does not exist. You don't have total participation by everybody in this process because they go through ways to take your ability to participate in the process away from you. Think about it. There were times when people would go to make their vote and then they would have to take some type of test or something in order to exercise the only real right and ability that they have to participate in the electoral process. So this whole notion of democracy, it's really just an illusion. And it's really important for us to understand, once again, we come back to that idea of sovereignty. You know, when you look at the United Nations and you look at the participation of African countries in that, they're largely excluded from that. When you look at the G20, same thing. Africans really don't have a voice in that. I'm remembering a video that I watched that had one of the leaders of an African country, and he was sitting on a stage with the president of France, the prime minister of France, Macron. And it was just when you looked at the body language, this brother was talking about the fact that they are excluded from equality within these nations that are governing others. And he said, hey, you know, we're not looking for a free ride. We're just basically, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm not expressing his words exactly as they said them, but he's just saying, we just want things to be fair. And until you're willing to ascribe to the true tenet of equity, equity is having an equal voice in decisions that are made that affect everyone. But what these globalist leaders are trying to do is they're trying to hijack our ability to stand up for ourselves and speak on an equal basis. The countries of Africa need to be united when they come to these conversations and not just be participants in the process. You know, you invite African leaders to America. You don't really define an agenda. You don't really give them an ample opportunity to participate as equal partners in the conversation so that they're just happy to be there and happy to walk away with whatever crumbs that they're offered in the process. And what usually happens in that scenario is another extension of the paradigm of exploitation of these countries and their people. So hypocrisy was definitely the operative word there, you know. And when they stop being hypocritical and when they begin to understand that they have to embrace us, they have to respect us in order to obtain the benefit that they get from our resources, then we're going to see some changes in the global paradigm. My brother, I'm really excited to know you and excited to hear what you have to share with the world. And before we go, I want to give folks an opportunity to know how they can reach out to you and take advantage of the benefit of the knowledge and expertise that you have.
Yes. Thank you very much. Right now, to reach me, I'm running on Sarnetta TV. It's called Sarnetta University. It's a YouTube channel that Sarnetta gave me to be coming on weekly to be able to discuss various issues. So it's called Sarnetta University. And I also have an NGO. The website will be up soon. It's called I Care Canada. It's a cultural mediation kind of NGO. We help with interpretation between different service providers in Canada here. They usually have problem with immigrants in communication because not all people from the continent come here for different reasons. Have they speak English or French? Some of them speak the local languages. So when they come here for business or for something, communication become an issue. So I created an NGO that will provide interpreters for Africans and other communities who might want to engage into something or need some services and their language become an issue. They can contact us and we provide an interpreter We also do empowerment, and our empowerment is a lot of various issues. It includes financial literacy training. It includes providing basic training for people on also young black boys and girls how to avoid addiction. We make a group discussion. You come, we discuss addiction. How do you get into addiction? What are the early signs? How do you get lured into it? So our is not dealing with people who are already addicted. We are dealing with people who might be susceptible to addiction, to prevent them, teenagers and all of that. So you come and then we have group talk, and we help you to navigate school life and friends, pressure of peers, so you don't get caught up in this addiction game going on. And also, we do a lot of stuff back home in Liberia, in West Africa. We're planning to be having workshop and training to prevent our people from going on this migrant crisis going on, trooping into Europe, going on the Mediterranean Sea, dying, ending up being enslaved in Libya. We want to create awareness about that and go back home to West Africa, not just train and create awareness, but also try to give opportunity to young people to be able to become entrepreneurs and self-reliant so they don't become victims of forced migration. So these are huge things that my organization tried to do. It's called I Care Canada, and the website will be up soon, so it will be easy to contact me from that point.
All right. Brother Antonio, any closing thoughts before we conclude?
Just that, just as you guys will see, that we got a upcoming superstar here, Brother Sekou. I just appreciate you for some of the information and the knowledge that you dropped on us today. I'm sure it was that folks who may be paying attention will see that how very useful it is and will be in the future. So again, I want to reiterate that we have to keep our eyes attuned and and in place. It's necessary for us to do that because the French and U.S. is not going to sit back and let these countries, like we've seen in the past, have their sovereignty and independence without some kind of pushback. So, and we must understand, and I hope the African countries themselves understand what is about to take place, and they need to show some type of solidarity and unity when it's come, because he's going to come, with the wolf and sheep clothes, that he's going to try to cause a divisive type of propaganda to keep some type of and to cause some type of destabilization of the country. So we should be looking for that, and we should be prepared and aware. So I appreciate you, Brother Sekou. We're going to get together a little later on as well when our schedules permit.
All right.
Okay. Is
I
there
want to
something
close
else
with
you
this
wanted
slide.
to? Yeah.
Yeah. So you see the slide?
Yes.
Okay, it's African Origin of Civilization. So if anybody have this book, the audience, on page 234 to 235, you'll find this very quote where the scholar Diop said, when we say that the ancestors of the blacks who today live mainly in Black Africa were the first to invent mathematics, astronomy, the calendar, sciences in general, art, religion, agriculture, social organization, medicine, writing technique, and architecture, that they were the first to erect buildings out of 6 million tons of stone, the Great Pyramid, as architects and engineers. Consequently, the black man must become able to restore the continuity of his national historic past, to draw from it the moral advantage needed to conquer his place in the modern world. Thank you.
Right. Well said.
All right. So again, we want to thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to future conversations so that you can continue to provide the enlightenment that you have given us. It's so obvious that we're on the same page, brother. We're all working towards the same cause, and we have to do everything that we can individually so we can live out the true meaning of Ubuntu. That's
Yes.
what it's all about. We're all one people, one love, and when we unite and we cast aside our religious differences and our political differences, we can be very effective in moving the cause towards the liberation and the freedom of African people around the globe. So thank you for joining us today. And we'll look forward to our next conversation. And as always, we say, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your best day. Peace.
Peace.
Peace, my brother. All right, brother Vince.